learned that emotions aren't necessarily instructions, they're information. They're not telling me what to do, they're telling me where I am.
I look at emotions as different layers of consciousness. You can't trust the mind. The more we understand that, and the less we identify with the thinking of the mind, the more power, control, and influence we're going to wield over it so that we can construct it and train the mind eventually to be our greatest ally. Self-reliance is only possible after you allow someone to support you. For me, Mike, what's most important at this point, in the journey for me is I just want to educate people.
Welcome to Joy², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is Joy², brought to you by Essentia Group. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Joy² Live with Joy podcast. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and every week we explore what it means to live, work, and lead with more joy, intentionally. Today's guest is someone I've been genuinely excited to speak with for quite some time because his life's work sits at the intersection of personal transformation, emotional mastery, performance, fulfillment, and human potential. If you've ever wondered why some people seem able to create extraordinary results while others remain stuck in the same patterns year after year, this conversation is for you. Because today we're going beneath the surface. We're talking about the inner game. And few people understand that game better than Joey Klein. Joey is a transformation and mastery expert, author, speaker, and founder and CEO of Inner Matrix Systems. For more than 2 decades, Joey has helped over 90,000 people around the world transform the way they think, feel, and perform. His clients include entrepreneurs, executives, professional athletes, and high achievers who want more than success. They want fulfillment, purpose, and lasting results. He's the author of The Inner Matrix and Relationship Alchemy and has become known for helping people overcome challenges that often seem impossible to solve. What makes Joey's story particularly powerful is that his journey began with his own search for peace and joy following a near-death experience at 19 years old. That search led him around the world studying meditation, martial arts, psychology, neuroscience, and personal mastery before developing what is now known as the Inner Matrix Method. Joy, welcome to the Joy² podcast. I'm truly grateful you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here. I'm glad we got this hooked up and made it happen.
Me too. Yeah, we had to get our teams involved. Well, your team and me, but you're awesome team,
You
by
gotta
the way.
pin me down.
Yeah, exactly. We got you. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And then I thought, Joy, before we dive in, I just wanted to share a little kind of context for our listeners. I was introduced to Intermatrix through one of your trainers, Ryan, amazing trainer, amazing human. And it shifted the way that I think about emotions, awareness, and personal growth. And one of the first insights that landed for me was that increased awareness leads to increased acceptance. And I began noticing just how many of my emotional reactions were actually fear based rather than love based. And that wasn't such a comfortable feeling because as the host of Joy², I was like, what? Shouldn't they be all like love based, right? The master of joy. But anyway, I learned that emotions aren't necessarily instructions, they're information. They're not telling me what to do, they're telling me where I am. So I stopped labeling emotions as good or bad, positive or negative, and started seeing them more as indicators. I like work in progress, but that's been my focus, right? To continue to do that for sure. I also became aware of what I used to call my death spirals, where one fear-based emotion would trigger another and another until I was completely wrapped up in a downward spiral and not to be confused with a downward dog, not even close. And what fascinated me was realizing that if emotional patterns can be trained in one direction, they can also be trained in another. And instead of enforcing fear-based loops, we can intentionally build love-based ones. And another lesson that really stayed with me was the idea that what we resist persists. That insight helped me create a personal vision around freedom and develop practices like centering and box breathing that have helped me return to who I want to be and who I am at my essence. So one concept that really challenged me was the idea that all the body fundamentally knows is pleasure or pain. I hadn't really thought of it in that way before. And in my own life, I've translated that into focusing on creating abundance instead of focusing on lack and scarcity. And again, like the continual focus and the work in progress. So anyway, Joy, thank you for the work you've created because it's definitely made a meaningful impact on me personally.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you got so much out of doing the work and a little bit of training. It's always love to hear when people shift their paradigm around how they think of emotions and the interactions with themselves and their world and reality, because it is in that paradigm shift that we actually can transform ourselves and our life and our existence and our outcomes if we really want to. So that's
Yeah, no, I
awesome.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute, and I'm gonna continue with the program in September too. I told Ryan that I've had a lot going on with starting a podcast and selling her home, and it's been a busy kind of few months. I know it's been busy for you as well. So I told Ryan I'd love to kind of get more involved. Because I realize it's not really just one and done. It's becoming a master. It's training. It's repetition. It's building a community, being part of a community where we continue to explore that. So. Yeah, so super excited to be part of your community, one that you started a while ago, one that's been thriving. Yeah, no, very cool. Yeah, and hopefully we'll meet in person in the fall too, like we were chatting about before the podcast. So with all in person in one of your in person workshops and weekends. So here we go.
There we go. Deep dive
Now that
training,
I found you.
full immersion. That's where we learn what it's all about for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. So I thought I'd start with, just you're so busy building your company and you've got lots of stuff going on. I know you've got an active lifestyle in Colorado, busy making a difference and transforming lives and speaking and writing and building a team. What made you say yes to joining this conversation?
Honestly, my team's like, "We like this guy, Greg. You need to check it out. You need to hop on his podcast." And I trust my people, and so if they're like giving somebody a thumbs up, I'm all in. And Ryan had great things to say about you and your work and what you're up to. And so, it's all about people at the end of the day. People I trust say something's worth doing, then I'm gonna check it out.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for saying yes. I appreciate it. Thanks for trusting your team. Thanks for building such a great team. I haven't met an Intermatrix team member that I don't like. I mean, they're not just like okay. They're like Ryan off the chart. Kate, spending hours talking to her on Zoom, amazing. Caitlin, we've only communicated through email, but again, just like very fun, very positive, very professional. Just like wow, it's like the wow factor. It really is. It's not like oh, they're okay or oh, they're decent people. It's like no, it's the wow factor.
Yeah.
So
Something my
very
mentors really entrained in me early on was the idea of excellence and mastery. And something that I've always held myself to for several decades now is the idea of mastery, the idea of true excellence. And it's like when I look at the company, I look at what we're doing. If we're going to be about personal development and transformation, and we're going to talk about mastery, then there's no option but to have excellence as your standard across the board in terms of excellence inside of the people that you engage with and surround yourself with, excellence in their capacity, excellence in being able to work together and collaborate, and then excellence in what we create and the outcomes that we're able to facilitate for people. And I find that when you sort of, set that bar as the standard, we all just sort of hold ourselves to that account, right? We hold each other to that account. And then the byproduct is we get to love what we do every day. And it's so funny because I was just reflecting this morning on how intentional discomfort is what actually eliminates pain and suffering. And so, like, you were talking about, like, looking at yourself
right.
and you go, "Oh, man, I've
Yeah,
got these painful emotions that are rolling around in here that I didn't maybe realize were there, and maybe I don't pay attention to them as much as I should." Because 99% of people, their norm is some fear-based state, whether it's anxiety or overwhelm, or some people it's more debilitating, right? They're, like, living with a pretty
right,
severe sense of, like, unworthiness or shame or guilt or doubt or depression or these things, and it's often not talked about. Like, people don't often know what to
right.
do about it, and a lot of times traditional methods tend to fail people, right? It's like you try to go to a
Mm,
traditional therapist, psychologist, or you try some mindset app and these different things, and it's like it's not wanting it to change. People just get caught, and it's so funny because like when you first sort of sit with yourself and go, "Whoa, there's that emotion," and just don't do anything with it. You just let yourself be with it and acknowledge that it's there. It's like it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, right? It's an increased level of
Yeah.
discomfort than maybe coping and just kind of distracting ourselves with TV or the phone or scrolling on social media or, taking a drink or 2 or all the things that we could do to sort of
Mhm.
distract from the discomfort that we feel with ourselves each day. But it's like if we allow ourselves to engage that intentional discomfort, it eliminates pain and suffering. Right, and it's like even the
Yeah.
workout I did this morning, right, I hopped into a cold plunge for 3 minutes, and it's like, this is not great, like, the cold plunge never gets better,
Right.
but it's like, oh, this intentional discomfort is what creates excellence and true fulfillment, and then eliminates most pain and suffering, and so I think if we engage with that mindset, it can serve us very well.
Well, it's interesting because it made me think about, like, when I was growing up as a kid, like, I guess to kind of boil down, like, the emotions into 4 basic emotions, like, through the men's work we did, we just to keep it simple, like, mad, sad, glad, or scared. Those
Mhm,
are kind of the buckets that we worked within, and I
right,
realized, just using those that as a kid and for a good portion of my adult life, up until maybe 20 years ago, I kinda had anything other than joy or being happy, as a negative emotion. Like if I'm mad, sad, or scared, those are weak emotions. I'm not in control, right? I'm not being strong. So, and as opposed to just like it's just an emotion, it's just how I'm
yeah,
feeling, right now and working through it and being intentionally uncomfortable with it and not trying to dismiss it. Cause I guess, like that whole thing, what we resist persists.
sure.
If we keep kind of trying to, shove it down, it's gonna keep festering. I love that word.
That's exactly right. It's interesting because, like, so very few people, right? I definitely was in this camp until I went down a deep dive of study, but, like, most people don't really fundamentally understand emotions and what they are. And so if we look at emotion from a neurological perspective, a lot of people, they feel a lot of regret and a lot of shame, a lot of guilt over feeling negative or fear-based emotions, and we call them negative. I
Right.
call them fear-based emotions because neurologically speaking,
Yeah.
our fight or flight system is on when we feel any of
Okay.
those emotions, sadness, overwhelm, anxiety, and so on, right? And so our system goes into fight or flight, the nervous system, as opposed
Mm.
to parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, creative thinking, critical thinking. And so when we look at
Right.
it from a nervous system standpoint, it really is like one mechanism is either on or off. Sympathetic is either on or off,
Mhm.
fight or flight. Parasympathetic is on or off, right? Rest, digest, and that's where we have access to critical thinking, creative thinking. And so it's interesting because a lot of people don't understand the basic fundamentals of their nervous system is that we have a fear-based bias. And so what that means is that our brain is very primitive in nature. It really just cares about survival. And so it's always sort of walking through life with a threat assessor. And it's going, where are the threats? And then the reaction to the threat is usually anxiety or overwhelm to avoid some sense of perceived pain. And that's what's
Right.
happening in the hard wiring. And so we're constantly, the brain's constantly going, where's the threat? Where's the threat? Where's the threat? And then up the
Mhm.
emotion is to encourage us to avoid the threat. But the thing is, it's a
Mhm.
perceived threat. It's not real. And so what we got to do
Right.
is we got to learn to sort of biohack, if you will, or I think of it almost like hot wiring a car a little bit, where we've got to recondition the neurology of our brain because our brain is always going to go, where's the threat? Where's the threat? Where's the threat? But if we understand the right conscious discipline to get inside of and the right practices to engage, the right training to do, what we can do is we can remind the brain and remind our nervous system, these are not threats. I'm okay. And then in the
Right.
place where, we do want to perceive a threat relative to the optimization of life, we want the brain to sort of trigger an uncomfortable emotion to remind us like a fire alarm, hey, don't do that. It's not going
Right.
to go well. And so what happens is most people have not guided themselves in that process. It's not self-driven. It's happening on their behalf by way of environment, situation, etc. And so a lot of us have gotten, the brain has gotten wired, right? We all hear that term, neurons that fire together, wire together. And so a lot of us have
Right.
created
Yeah.
these neuroassociations that actually predispose us to bad decision making. And what I mean by bad decision making is just everyday basic things where people wonder,
Oh,
like, why can't I get myself to work out every morning? It's like, I know it's good for me. I know I want those results, but then I wake up and I sleep in, I don't get to the gym, right? And that's what I mean by like the wiring has gotten, unfortunately predisposed us to not going to the gym. Or like you end up at lunchtime and you're like, oh, I should have the salad and some salmon. And you're like, cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke, and then maybe a shake, right? And it's like, what like, and then we think about it, we feel bad because it's like, "Wait a minute, why am I not able to sort of make these basic decisions that I know are good for me?" And then people go self-sabotage. They have this word called self-sabotage. Why do I keep
Right.
self-sabotaging
Okay.
myself? And we're not actually ever self-sabotaging. It's just, again, that conditioning in terms of what our nervous system is perceiving as a threat and what it perceives as, is gonna support us to survive has gotten miswired. And so if we understand how to learn to see what I call the ghost in the machine, or the patterns that are
Yeah.
driving the decision making and those micro decisions that keep us from the life we want, we can gain mastery over ourselves and predetermine the choices we're going to make way before we make them. And so the example I always give people is, imagine you can wake up tomorrow, decide you're going to eat healthy, or decide you're going to be affirming and complimentary of your significant other as opposed to critical and judgmental. Or all of a sudden you could decide to have patience with your children and hold the sense of like love and compassion that you'd like to hold with them, as opposed to kind of losing our minds because we're at our wits end and that kind of thing. And it's like, what would life look like if you could go, hey, here's what I'm going to do tomorrow and for the next 3 years without missing a single day, and then wake up and execute with, high perfection or high accuracy, where like 90% of the time we hit the mark. And so we go, man, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna work out every day. And then for the next 365 days, we can hit it without missing. And in my mind, that's a superpower.
That is a superpower. It kinda reminds me, you talk about and you paraphrase Albert Einstein, and which we do. It's like that whole problems can't be solved at the same level of
Right.
consciousness or awareness in which they were created. And you kinda tie that into why traditional, I think you call it traditional therapy, conventional therapy isn't as effective, as this. I'd love to kinda hear you share that too, because I think that kinda also ties into what you're talking about is, like, how do we get access to, like, how do we close that knowing doing gap? Like you said, I mean, we all know, what we need to do to lose weight. We all know what we need to do to be in better shape, but we don't always do it. Right? So, like, we keep getting in our own way, and I know for me, I know it, and then I'll get stressed about it because 'cause I'm not doing it, and then I'll get stressed about being stressed, and that's what I mean. I kinda create this death driver because I know it's, like, in my body, it's, like, dis-ease, and I'm thinking, "Oh, the harm I'm doing to myself and, to my mental health and my physical health," and then, it's like, how do we break out of that? How do we create that new level of awareness? How do we not spend so much time in the past and revisiting those. Yeah, I'm not gonna say, so you've got me now thinking not negative emotions, but fear-based
Uh-huh.
emotions. Thank you for that.
Nice. Good
That's
catch.
great awareness, right?
It's
Yeah.
already working. Training.
On-the-spot training right here, everyone.
Yeah, perfect. So here's kind of how I think about it. Like, and I think everything has its place. I've spent the last 2 decades, studying in India, right? Meditating 8 hours a day, doing inner training in my early 20s with a sadhu who literally lived in a cave for 8 years and, drank a glass of
Wow,
milk a day and meditated straight for 8 years, right? And was doing inner
wow.
training and yoga, all right, that kind of thing. And then on the a complete other side, I had a world-renowned psychologist, one of my closest mentors, Dr. Lou, had a practice in
Mm,
Los Angeles. And so it's like anything that has had to do with personal development or the evolution of the human psyche, I've kind of thrown myself into and looked at in a pretty deep way at this point. And
right.
psychology has a place, and it does something very well.
Yeah,
Like psychology and your more modern therapies, therapist psychology, etc., is they're very good at identifying maybe like pattern dynamics, right? But the deficit to it is the primary attention and focus is on 2 key things. The challenge focus, what's going wrong? What's the difficulty? We talk about it a lot. And then, well, why is it there? And then we search in the past for why it's there. And then there's in my opinion, a bad assumption made, which is that it has to do with some trauma from our childhood. It has to do with something that happened with us and for us growing up, which is just completely false, right? Because when you study ancient wisdom traditions, there's no focus on the inner child, there's no focus on the past, and they are the happiest
right,
and most fulfilled people I've ever met, right? Are these like monks or these
right.
like, Tibetan sadhus or Indian sadhus or like Tibetan monks meditating in caves. And it's interesting because their focus
Mm,
is the exact opposite. It's on, let's focus on peace itself. Let's focus on the quality and put our
yeah,
attention on the thing we want to experience and who we want to become and evolve into the future. And so all the focus is on the evolution of self, who we want to become, what we want to aspire to, and then how do we
right.
train and cultivate the experience we want to have right now. as opposed to
Right.
the past. And so and then the result and the outcome is completely different. Now, I do think again there's benefit to pattern recognition, right? If we can notice,
Right.
"Oh, I feel sad," and then, be aware of that so that we can then make a shift, right? So there's some
Mhm.
benefit to it, but what happens is if we become hyper focused on it, then we actually exacerbate the thing we're trying to change. And so if I
Right.
go, "Man, I
Okay.
feel sad," and then, sad as I say,
Mm.
emotions have rules, and this goes back to that Einstein quote where it's like, if we want to solve the problem that we're currently facing, we have to access a level of consciousness or intelligence, beyond that problem, a higher consciousness. And so I look at emotions as different layers of consciousness, different levels of
Okay.
consciousness, because if we look at when we feel sad, just as an example, we're
Mhm.
always focused, the mind's attention is on one thing, the perception of the absence of something. And so if you pay attention
Mm,
to
okay.
whenever we're feeling sad, it's like, oh, my
Yeah.
attention is on the absence of something. And so what I do is I look at emotions almost like a detection system or a fire alarm system or a
Yes.
compass, where it's like, oh, my
Yeah.
emotion, the sadness, it's not
GPS. That's your
good.
GPS.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not positive. It's not
Right.
negative. It's just letting
Right.
me know that right now my mind's attention is on the absence of something. The absence of money that I wanna have that I don't have, or, I lost my pet and, I don't have a pet in my life anymore, or somebody close to me, or I'm not able to do the things physically that I was once able to do, and, I'm not fit like I was in my 20s, and now I'm 50, and so wherever we look, like, whenever we feel sad, we're focused on the absence of something. If we pick a
Right.
love-based state and we go, "Man, I really wanna feel, a sense of gratitude," it's the
Right.
opposite. The mind's attention is on the focus of the presence of something and our appreciation that it's there. And it can be something so little like, man, I'm so appreciative for a shower and healthy food and water. Like whenever I would get back from my trips from India where there was no clean drinking water. And like I remember I was in this little like hotel room hostel thing. And like you'd turn on the water and it was yellow. It would come out yellow and it smelled like
Oh, man.
horrific. And I'm like, well, I haven't had a shower in 3 days, but I smell better than the water. So I guess I'm just not gonna shower for a fourth day, right? So like really I was in the middle of nowhere, right? This kind of thing.
Right.
And then when I got home after doing that for, sometimes a couple months at a time, I remember I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I just love clean water and a shower and fresh food every day and the air is clean and there's no pollution." And
Mm.
it was like this overabundance of just gratitude over the most simple things. But then I realized like, "Oh, I'm feeling this gratitude. My intelligence is operating a different place. My attention is on the presence of things and the appreciation of them." And so that's where it was like, "Oh, let's start looking at emotion completely different than modern psychology and start
Right.
let's not assume anything's wrong at all, but rather the emotions are there
Right.
actually to support us and that they've been doing this for thousands of years, and let's learn the language and then how to leverage it as opposed to see it as though it's a signal that something's wrong and
Right.
we need to do
Well,
something about it."
it's interesting because I would say I've done therapy. I've done tons of personal development, lots of courses, workshop, men's work. I've been in it. I've led it, lead retreats. So I've done tons and tons of work. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, I'm a personal development junkie, human connection junkie. I spent a lot of time diving into my past, and I gotta say, Joey, that I think most of my trauma I made up. I,
100
it's like when I really go back it's like I made it
Yeah,
up, like, I had a great childhood. Was it perfect? No. Is anyone's perfect? No, but
yeah.
it's like, when I look at my parents and my family and my brothers and relatives, and we used to say we'd get together for family reunions and family get-togethers over holidays, and every time we were like, "Wow, are we, like, the only family that doesn't fight, that just, like, laughs and supports each other and loves each other?" I mean, over the years, you get a little bit of stuff starts to,
Sure,
come out of the
sure.
woodwork, but generally speaking, it was like I honestly, I kept thinking like, "Why am I spending so much time back there?" Right? Trying to figure out what's wrong, quote unquote, "wrong with me now," right? Like, why am I not, doing things differently? Why am I feeling sad or mad or scared, or why have I made some of the choices, or why am I in shame and guilt for certain things in the past as opposed to just, I made the best decision I made at the time based on my level of awareness.
Yeah.
And guess what? Now I'm at a different level of awareness, and I'm not gonna make that same choice now,
Right,
right?
right.
And just celebrate the fact, like, even and it also made me think about that when I realize certain things, whether it's through a conversation like we're having now, or it's through a course, or it's through coaching or therapy, and I realized something, and I'm like, "Oh," like, I'm glad I realized it, but I easily go back to, "I wish I woulda realized it sooner." I start to go back into beating myself because that's
Yep.
that muscle that I've trained over and over again, as opposed to the presence of new information and the presence of a new level of awareness gets and it helped me make better choices. It's better that I know it now than never, right? Can I just stay there for a minute? And it's been practice. It's been a tough go, like, and not tough go like in my life or whatever, but tough to change that way of thinking, I guess is probably the best way to say it. But I love how how you've kind of shifted things and reframed things in a way that's serving a lot of people and making a difference. I know you talk about 3 emotional competencies. I thought, maybe now's a good time to share those, like emotional resilience, emotional access, emotional centering. Like, can you walk us through those and explain, like, why they're so important for creating joy and fulfillment and
Mm.
performance?
100%. So when I looked at the individuals whom I met throughout the years who were genuinely the most fulfilled, right? And it's the exception, not the norm, unfortunately. Like like most people struggle more than they think and are truly not, what I would say fundamentally happy a majority of the time in the way that they could be or should be and experiencing like real life fulfillment. And then when I looked at people
I
performing
agree.
at the highest levels, like a pro athlete or an entrepreneur at the top of their game and these kinds of things, it was like they had a competency that was different than most. And it wasn't that they were different, because a lot of times we just think, "Oh my gosh, of course they can do it. They must be different. They're a freak of nature," or something like this. And it's like, no, it had nothing to do that. It had nothing to do with that at all, right? It had to do with somewhere
Right.
they developed some core competencies that then they were able to
Mm,
leverage to produce the results that they
right.
produce. And fundamentally, one thing that I saw consistent across the board was these emotional competencies. And so number 1,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's one of the it is like one of the competencies, but it leads to developing competency, which is awareness and sensitivity.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, why it's so important is like I just spoke with a successful entrepreneur last week. And I was talking with him. He's like, Joey, I'm just kind of curious about your work. And, I'm pretty good. Like, I don't really ever feel bad. And life is just great for me. So I'm not sure what we're going to do today. And I said, okay, great. Let me ask you a question. I ask everybody the same question. I go, what's the biggest
Right.
challenge you're facing right now? That's going
Right.
on in your life, even if it's not huge or devastating, but just maybe mildly
Mhm.
irritating. Then he starts talking about his business and his team that he's running and how they don't always do what they want. And, in about 2 minutes, he was super angry and overwhelmed and anxious. And I go, "So, how you feeling right now?" He's like, "Dude, I'm pissed off. I'm anxious." He's like, "I guess there's more emotion there than I thought, huh?" And I go, "Exactly. Like a lot of times emotions are there. We're just not present to the fact that they're driving, that they are there." And it's weird
Right.
because like I had a
Right.
mentor that used to say to me all the time, my martial arts mentor, he said, "Joey, you're always the hardest person for you to see." And it's so
Mm,
fundamentally hard to see ourselves, which is counterintuitive because we live with ourselves every day. We would think we know ourselves better
mm,
than anybody else. But it's so easy to have all kinds of feelings and emotions and experiences going on within ourselves that's motivating every
mhm.
choice, decision, and action we'll ever take and not even know that it's
Right.
there, which is weird, right? Like we
Wow.
ask, we ask people like, how
Right.
you doing? Oh, I'm generally okay all the time. And it's like, well, actually, primarily, I drive with a lot of agitation and overwhelm and anxiety and disappointment. I'm just not noticing it's there. So the first step is creating and training because it's a skill, it's a competency. If we do the right thing, we get really good at it. Just like going to the gym or like learning to swing a golf club. Like if you understand how to train the mechanics, you're going to develop the competency. And so the first is like developing an ability of awareness sensitivity so we know where we
Right.
are from a nervous system perspective, sympathetic,
Mhm.
parasympathetic, love based, fear based. And then what are the qualities of emotion that are driving? Where is the attention of the mind? And then, am I
Uh-huh.
leveraging the nervous system properly? Then from there, we want to develop 3 core competencies. The first
Right.
competency is I feel X, like whatever it is, and I can
Right.
take high action despite the feeling. So the emotion is no longer
Right.
dictating my choice, decision, action, but yet I still
Okay.
feel it. So like I wake up and man, I feel, overwhelmed or I feel, sad. And I can get myself to go on that run or be kind to my significant other or have patience with my
Mhm.
child despite the way I feel, right? It's not
Okay.
dictating my
Right.
behavior. That's first competency. Second competency is I'm aware that I feel a certain way and I can center. on both the fear-based side and love-based side, because so many people think fear-based emotions bad, love-based emotions good, but then I remind people some of the biggest, dramas that people create in their life happen from love-based states, because every affair that I've ever talked to where somebody had an affair on their husband wife after being married for 15 years, I go, "Why'd you have that affair?" "Well, I just loved him so much. I was so in love."
Right.
And so, like, this
Right.
feeling of love and passion can really derail your life just as much as a fear-based state. And so
Yeah,
that
got it.
ability of knowing where we are and finding center, being able to shut the fear-based state down, find center, be aware we're in a love-based state, like excitement in Vegas. I mean, how many of us have gotten in trouble doing that, right? Like, "I'm gonna win." "No, you're
Yeah.
not, it's fixed."
Uh,
And so, like, being able
100%.
to being able to center before you quit your job and start a business, having never been a
Yeah.
business owner, right? So it's like love-based states, passion, excitement, inspiration can sometimes derail us too. So being aware when we
Mhm.
feel these deregulating emotions on either side, and then being able to center them. How do we turn them off? And then the final competency is how do we train the love-based states that we wanna drive with and intentionally anchor and wire it to the future self in which we wanna become and the future outcomes results we wanna get, and then reinforce those as the new reflex that becomes our dominant place we take action from in life. And so
Right.
training those intentionally in a conscious way so that then the unconscious mechanism of when we feel it just automatically takes over on our behalf. And so that would be the third competency. So number one is be aware of how we feel, taking action that's aligned despite the feeling. Competency number two, being aware of when intense emotion is there, love based, fear based, and being able to center them, being able to turn them off, nervous system regulation. And then number three, designing the emotion and training the emotion that we need to feel that moves us to becoming the person we aspire to become and also creating the practical outcomes and results we want in our life, whether it has to do with losing some weight, health and vitality, making more money, starting to save and invest, whatever those things might
It's
be.
like you're speaking right into me right now. Those are all things I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, and when we
Would
look
you
and like when we
Yeah,
miss marks in our life, like myself included, when I'm
yeah,
missing a mark, I can usually go to one
yeah,
of those competencies that have
yeah.
gotten a little bit weak or offline or that I need to, tune up a little bit. And that's usually the thing that's going to sort of determine that I get the outcome and get
I
myself
love
back
that,
on
and you
track.
also talk about, like, emotions only last for what is it, like, typically 90 seconds? There's, like, research on that. It's like, "This too shall pass." Like, we might be in the depths of despair, but it doesn't mean that we're gonna be there for days or weeks or months,
Yeah.
Like, that feeling isn't it's like, "This too shall pass." Like, when someone explained to me that that applied to positive emotion or, well, I shouldn't say positive, love-based
Right.
emotions
Right.
as
Right.
well as fear-based, I was like, "No." I was like, 'cause I thought it was just for the negative stuff, this too shall pass, because usually that's when you hear it. Someone's like, "Hey, you're not gonna this doesn't define who you are. This isn't gonna define the rest of your life. This is like right now, it's a snapshot." And it doesn't have to dictate your actions. Like, you also mentioned that, people look at fear-based as negative emotions and love-based as positive emotions, and I know I have, and I still like, you can hear it in my I'm literally correcting as I go, and but one thing for me is it doesn't feel good in my body,
Yeah.
though. Like, I mean, if I'm like a love-based emotion, I'm like, I can feel it, it's
Hmm.
butterflies,
Hmm.
it's excitement,
Yeah.
and when I'm in fear and I'm scared, I carry fear and joy in my stomach, and it took me a while to distinguish the difference between the 2, and I realized that when I was going through a fear-based emotion, I'd often hold my breath. And when it was
Yeah.
love-based emotion, I'd be breathing regularly.
Yeah.
So that was one of my clues, like, am I excited right now or am I scared, right? It
Right.
was a way for me to kinda check in with myself.
Yeah. 100%. And it's interesting because, like, yes, the neurological lifespan of an emotion is 90 seconds. Meaning if
Right,
it's not stimulated from an outside source. And so what that means is if I'm in an environment, usually it's the mind is the outside source. A lot of people, they don't relate to their mind as outside of themselves. But if we start to look at our
right.
mind
Yeah.
as an entity actually outside of ourself, as a mechanism that is not
Mhm.
who we are, we don't over identify with the mind and we just start truly learning to become the witness or the observer of the mind, we start to notice things like I was mentioning earlier, where it's like, man, when I feel sad, the mind is
Right.
focused its attention on the absence of something. Well, if the mind isn't focusing on the absence of something, then there is nothing to activate that sadness, to fuel it, to keep it alive. And so when we learn, if we can train, again, this is a training as well, but if we train our inner competency to truly learn to still the mind, where we can be awake, aware, and present, but there is no thinking, right? Then we're not focused on the absence of that presence, whatever it is. So now all of a sudden, neurologically, there is no threat perceived. The brain isn't perceiving a threat because when we look at, oh my gosh, I lost my significant other and they passed away 8 years
Right.
ago, I'm seeing that I lost love and therefore there's pain. And so to avoid pain, I'm trying, like the brain's trying to figure out how to reestablish a presence. Or if it's like, hey,
Right.
I don't have the money that I want to have, the brain is thinking, well, if I focus on not having this money and I make it important, one day I'll have it and I'll be safe and I'll be okay and I'll be able to pay my bills. And so the
Right.
brain is looking at this stuff as a threat. But when you eliminate, again, the perception of the absence, it's no longer perceiving a threat. And so the brain regulates. It goes from sympathetic, fight or flight, into parasympathetic, because that's its natural state. Like the nervous system is actually supposed to be in a parasympathetic state a majority of the time. It's like, we have these neighborhood deer, they're like the neighborhood pets at my house, and so,
Right.
like, you look out the window and we put fountains out for them so they drink the water, and, like, we kinda call the wildlife to our home because, like, my fiancé and I
Right.
like seeing the deer and the bobcat and the mountain lions, like, they all
Oh,
kinda
wow.
live around our house, and, like, they're usually
Amazing.
just hanging out, playing a little bit, they're eating, they're
Mhm.
grazing, they're totally relaxed and fine. Unless they perceive a threat, they immediately go on high
Right.
alert and they can run really fast. But then as soon as
Yep.
they know they're safe and you watch them, they'll just relax and they'll be chill again. What's happened in modern
Mm.
society is our brain is constantly perceiving threats. And so what's happened is
Right.
we've become overreactive inside the
Them.
sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, is on most of the time for the majority of people. And so we just haven't really we've forgotten the experience of being fully regulated, where we just go into fight or flight occasionally, right? Because it's gotten normalized as opposed to dominant in the way that it is for a lot of people. And so the first step to training is actually like when we look at emotion, isn't trying to shift how we feel through the mind. And this is a
Right.
big distinction because you go to a therapist, you go to a psychologist, you go to most coaches, they're going to tell you to think your way to feeling better. But that fails
Right.
and it doesn't work because once my system is in fight or flight, I'm
Yeah.
perceiving a threat until I turn that mechanism off. I'm not going to shift my emotional state. And if we understand where emotion came from, if we just babysat our friend's child, she's 3, right? And,
Mm.
like, when she was 2 well, a year old, and when she was 2, she couldn't talk to you really, right? But she had all these emotions. And so what we don't realize is that emotion is our first language. Like, we don't start thinking until we have language. Like, we can't form thought until we have language. And so for the first 2 to 5 years of life, there's tons of emotions, but there's not a lot of thinking, right? Thinking happens
Mhm.
later. And so if we think about that, it makes no sense to try to regulate our emotions through thinking when that was our primary, communication system the first 5 years of life.
Right.
There was no rationalization. And so, if we understand that, emotional regulation happens through the nervous system first. And so like you were saying earlier when you said you were noticing you felt certain emotions, I notice I'm holding my
Mhm.
breath. I notice my stomach
Yeah.
hurts a little bit. I notice I'm breathing
Yep.
short, shallow. I notice my shoulders are up my ears. I notice tension in my body. That's all fight or flight.
Right.
So it's like the two
Yeah.
first things we need to do to regulate emotion so that they don't last more than 90 seconds, right? Learn to leverage
Yeah.
that 90-second rule is acknowledge the
Yep.
emotion we're feeling, wherever it is. Step one,
Right.
relax the body. Like truly start at the top of the head
Yeah.
and just release tension. And then
Got
after
it.
that, go into some sort of deep, intentional rhythmic breathing. We always use the four-sided breath, gentle inhale through the nose, pause, hold at the top, exhale out through the nose, pause, hold at the bottom while intentionally relaxing the body, breathe from your belly. And that's what will shift the nervous system from sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic. And so now we're regulated. Regulated meaning we've turned off the fear-based state and we've centered even maybe
Mhm.
that love-based state that can also get us in trouble. And so now once we find that center, now we can direct ourselves. Now we can focus the mind. Now we can put our attention in the direction we want it to go ahead and train and activate the emotion that we want to leverage relative to what we're doing, right? And
Right.
so it's like counterintuitive and it's the opposite of what a lot of people have been trained is like you don't actually think your
Right.
way to feeling better because once you're hijacked,
Right.
you're done, right? And so you gotta actually get
Right.
unhijacked, which actually happens through nervous system stimulation first. Then we have emotional regulation second. Now we go into attention and focusing the thought third. And so what I teach people, and again, this is all through training, but it's like step one is realizing that there are fear-based emotions, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, sadness, shame, guilt, regret, jealousy, all that stuff. And then, yes, there
Right.
are love based emotions such as happiness or excitement, right? As we think about it. And then there's another category called natural state, state of being. And so when there's
Right.
the absence of thought and we learn to train and discipline the mechanism of the mind, and we can be aware and present, but without thinking, what's there is a deep sense of, say, peace or an authentic sense of joy.
Mhm.
But the mind isn't
Right.
thinking. There's no reason for the feeling. It's just the natural reality essence of our nervous system, who we are, just sort of emanating and coming through. And so a lot of people, they kind of, when I talk about state, they're like, well, I don't really understand what that is. And it's like, well, we gotta train to access it. But just think about your natural state is the experience of oneself absent fear-based emotions, absent positive love-based emotions or strong love-based emotions, excuse me, and then what's left is who we are.
There's a lot to unpack in there. I know this is amazing because there's so many things that came to mind. One, the most recent one was with men's work. We'd sit around in circle, and the first thing we did, all men, of course, led by two men facilitators when I did it. Amazing men, amazing teachers, coaches, and they would say, "Let's all check in. How are you feeling?
Mhm, mm,
Like what are you feeling?
yeah,
And be specific, mad, sad, glad, or scared. What's your dominant emotion? And where do you feel in your body? Those are typically,
mhm, mhm,
questions men don't ask and men don't
yeah,
really think about typically. And it was a great way to really identify what are we bringing in? Like, what are we carrying onto? And then I think just acknowledging it, because I think often, again, growing up thinking that anything other than joy or happiness was a negative emotion, it's like I wouldn't really acknowledge it, and then it would just keep persisting.
right, right,
'Cause it's like and I don't know if this is the best analogy, Joy, but I know that a lot of birds, like, if they get into a fight and there's that negative emotion or there's that anger or there's that fear or whatever it is, they'll literally flap their wings, and you'll see them do it to get rid of that energy, get out of their system, and then they
yeah,
can kinda settle down into maybe more peace and joy and tranquility, and it's like we don't always do that. We're always resisting it or pushing it away. I know I've done that a lot, and then it just keeps persisting. You're like, "God, why am I still feeling this way?" Why is this still going on?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, there's
exactly.
a
And
lot,
the
yeah.
thing I always kinda, like, remind people of is, I always say, like, don't think about emotion as something we're holding or need to let go. Although it can seem that way, right? Because we wanna kinda, like, get rid of the thing that feels bad. Think of it more like, a reflex that's been trained. And
Okay.
so, like a small child, again, if they take their finger and they shove it up their nose, or most parents are gonna take their hand and they're gonna, when they're like 2, they're gonna take it out of their nose and be like, "No, no, don't do that," because they don't want
Yeah.
the quote unquote "bad habit" to form. Or like if they're biting their
Right.
nails, once again, they're gonna take their
Yes.
hand, probably pull it out of their mouth, like, "Don't bite your nails, it's not a good habit," right? It's a bad habit.
Right.
And so emotions aren't something that you vomit and get rid of, right? It's like
Right.
what it's become is a nervous system reflex. And we can
Okay.
even break down the mechanisms in the brain that are
Mhm.
causing that experience. So, like anger is an example, the amygdala perceives a threat, sends a signal to the brainstem. Brainstem, tells the adrenals to start pumping out adrenaline into the body. And so there's a nervous system reflex that if we activate it and we activate it again, we activate it again, the brain gets very good at producing anger. And so if we want to stop feeling angry, we can't just let anger go because we've been picking our nose a really long time. And so it's become a really strong
Right.
habit, right? It's become a very strong reflex. And so the key is retrain the reflex, right? Be aware that we're angry. Use again
Yeah.
relaxation, breath work, whatever the tool technique strategy is that one trains to center, but then train the new reflex. And that's where it a lot of times
Mhm.
falls apart. Like traditional therapies will focus on the challenge at hand and why are we angry and where did it come from? And they'll do that for a decade. But they never get to, well, how do we feel and anchor to a sense of gratitude or peace or compassion or joy and train the new
Yes.
reflex? How do we rewire the neurology, right? Because, like in the brain, we form these neural networks, is what they're called. That then is
Mhm.
what's making it very easy to feel and be angry. So if we learn how to rewire those neural networks, it's not that we got rid of anger, we retrained the pattern dynamic within ourselves at a nervous system, emotion, and mindset level. And now what happens when we do that, if you tried to feel angry, you couldn't. And that's how we know
Right.
that we've really retrained the mechanism at a
Yeah.
nervous system level is because, like, things that used to activate the anger not only do not activate the anger, but if you even tried to feel it, you couldn't feel it because the networks have literally been redesigned, redefined. And so, like, the rage that I used to know when I was a teenager that I learned from my family,
Yeah.
like, if I tried
Yes.
to make myself feel that kind of rage, I don't have the mechanisms available to do it. Now, I could go
Oh,
retrain it. I know how to do that, which would
yeah.
be an interesting decision, but like, my
Yes.
brain actually isn't equipped, it's not trained and conditioned, formed for that anymore, and so I'd actually have to go recondition in order to access it. So the more we understand emotion from a sort of reflex standpoint, the more we realize, "Oh, wait, I can train this stuff. It's not about managing circumstance and situation so I feel better." Because most people think, "I'm just not with the right person, I need to make more money, I need a less stressful job. I need to somehow change my environment and circumstance such that I feel better." That will never work. We actually have to retrain our way of being, our nervous system, emotion, and mindset so that we can show up joyful no matter the situation and circumstance. It's actually the opposite.
It's like being intentional with it as opposed to waiting and to see what's that event gonna be like? What's that retreat gonna be like? What's that meeting gonna be like? Is it gonna be good? Is the
Yeah,
conversation gonna be good? And you're giving away all your power as opposed to being intentional and just like, "You know what? I'm gonna bring me. I'm gonna be joyful." And yeah, it may not meet certain expectations, but doesn't mean that has to derail me.
exactly.
But thinking about it, and that versus like I know we have all these different thoughts when you talked about, the mind, but when we're applying intellectual capacity and we're thinking, that's different than just like a thought coming into our mind and us trying to make it like and believing it.
Yeah,
Like it could be like a negative thought.
yeah,
It's like sometimes I mean a thought will pop into my head and I was like, wow, that is dark.
yeah.
Like that is not
Right,
really that's not really me and who I am.
right,
Like where is that
100%.
even coming from?
Yeah. And from the
But it's
horror
like
movie you
no, I guess
watched,
it's
like,
noticing.
that's the thing, like, we
Right.
we inherit this stuff from all over the place, and the mind just sort of
Right.
regurgitates it, repeats it, you know? Again, kinda like a
Right.
small child, like, I'm always very careful when I have my friend's kid over, because she's 3, and, like, I noticed this morning,
Right.
I said a curse word, she didn't catch it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to say that around her," I'm like, I don't mind, I just don't want her to learn her first cuss word from me, like, she's gotta learn that from someone else, that's the
That's
key, like, her
right.
parents or something. But it's like we gotta remember that about our system, like, a lot of our thoughts that
Yeah.
we adopted from environment came from movies that we watched that we don't remember watching now, or horror movies, flicks that we
Yeah.
watch, or some drama, whatever, and so, as I always say, like, you can't trust the mind. The more we understand that, and the less we identify with the thinking of the mind, the more power, control, and influence we're gonna wield over it, so that we can construct it and train the mind eventually to be our greatest ally. But for most
Wow.
people, their mind is an undisciplined child or has become the
Right.
greatest adversary they'll ever know, right? And so
Right.
we've
Got
gotta
it.
train the mind, we gotta condition the mind to think on our behalf and operate the way we want it to. We have to master the mind as opposed to being enslaved to it. And the first step to doing that is just what you said, which is look at every thought the mind has and go, "It's just not real. That's non-valid." And instead of, identifying with the mind, go into an assessment mode. Like if there's something you want to create, you want to be happy. Does this thought take me to happiness? Like when I trained peace within myself, I would look at thoughts and I wouldn't look at it as, is this real or not? Is this true? Is this valid or not? I would go, will thinking this way, will allowing the mind to think this way take me to the experience of peace within myself, regardless of what's happening? And if it was a no, I forced
Right.
myself to change the thinking. If it was a yes, I
Wow.
reinforced it. It became the good habit, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
And then once you start to relate in that way where you go, "Hey, none of the thoughts are real or true." Then we can look at it
Mhm.
and go, "Great, what are the thought constructs? What are the beliefs? What are the values that I'm gonna adopt? What are the principles I'm gonna reinforce such that it drives me to who I wanna become and the life I wanna create?" And so
Right.
we get to design ourselves, we get to build ourselves, we get to create ourselves based on the aspiration that we have, as opposed to looking at ourselves as there's something right or wrong with us that needs to
Wow.
be fixed.
I love that. Yeah, there's I'm gonna rewatch this episode, multiple times, I'm sure. There's so many nuggets in here for me, and I'm sure for people listening. I wanted to talk about, the way you talk about transformation and it being possible for anyone, regardless of circumstances, regardless of their past, which I love. And so for someone listening, and who feels stuck in their life, overwhelmed, trapped in old patterns, like where's the best place to begin? I know you kind of talk about transformation requires, four things. I don't know if now is the time to talk about those or if you've got, anything else that you want to share, but just like where do people start? Where do I start? And again, like as I'm going through this, I know it's bringing up stuff in my past. I'm like, yeah, I got to work on that somewhere too, right?
Yeah. Something that I've come to realize through the years, and it's something my mentors used to share with me that I didn't understand at first, but something they said is like,
Mhm.
you'll never get there on your own. We kind of live in a society where we kind of pride ourselves in the Western world on this idea of doing things on our own and not needing other people
Rugged,
and
rugged
self-reliance. Yeah,
individualism.
like individualism and things like that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because self-reliance is only possible after you allow
Mm.
someone to support you. Like, when I look at the way
Right.
I'm able to live
Yeah.
today, I would have never got here on my own. Like, the only reason I have the competency capacity I have is because I had really awesome mentors who were true masters in their field, who took me under their
Uh-huh.
wing. And then number 2, I was willing to let them guide me. I was willing to let them train me. And then that's what really led me to having a competence and capacity where I was then self-reliant and could pass that
Right.
forward and sort of give that to other people, right? And so what I would say is like if you really want to develop a high competency and capacity, you really want to create transformation in a true way, find the right guide and system to leverage such that you do become self-reliant as quickly as possible. And it's also how we compress time because you can like as an example for those who it's a right fit, they want to train with me in my company. Like I've been working on this for 22 years now and I'm kind of obsessed about it. Like 60, 80-hour
Right.
weeks like nonstop. Like this is just what I do. And so you get to
Right.
kind of like take the shortcut where you get to do all the things that don't work and just adopt the things
Mhm.
that do work in the most effective way and then create the self-reliance and empowerment. Now you're on your own. Now you can do it on yourself, right? Because my goal is always how do we create somebody to be empowered and self-reliant as quickly as possible so that they're not dependent? Because I think that's
Right.
how we create a strong humanity. That's how we create a strong human race, a strong world. Is if we become,
Mm.
if we access, self-reliance in their truest form, and then we contribute and give back, like that's the way we support each other. Right. And so verify 4 key things in whatever system you look at training and leveraging. Doesn't have to be my system, but I always say, look, number 1, does the person you're looking to train from have the competency themselves? That's like checkbox
Right.
1. If you can't verify that,
Yeah.
go somewhere else. Then
Yeah.
checkbox 2, can you verify that they've replicated the outcome result for hundreds of other people? Right? Like
Right.
it's a system that's
Proven
doing
success.
something and it
Track
wasn't an
record.
accident. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
no, if you go through this process, it creates a result." So that's like checkbox number
Mhm.
2. And then
Yeah.
checkbox number 3 is can you find, 3 degrees of separation? So, like, for me, like, I have a result. I've trained my trainers, and that like Ryan, you were mentioning Ryan, whom you met. Ryan is out there creating the outcome and result on behalf of people that I'll never meet, right? And
Right.
so what that
Yep.
shows you is that it's not about a person, it's about a
Yeah.
system or a method of developing that if you go through
Okay.
the process of training, you're going to get kind of a predictable outcome and result. And so
Right.
that's what you wanna find is, like, leverage the system but then enroll somebody to teach you the system. So I think about it like martial arts. Like my martial arts master
Right.
trained in this style called Harongdo, right? That was the style I
Right.
competed in. And he started training under his father, who's a grandmaster level martial artist from the age of 4 years old. And he was in his
Wow.
40s when I met him. So he'd been training and tutored by his father for 40 years inside this system
Right.
of martial arts. And so, if I had just watched videos and tried to learn martial arts, I would have just hurt myself, right? And so the system was there, which made my master as good as he was. Like he was one of the top 10 martial artists in the world. And he was kind of like given that kind of, that recognition from peers. And
Wow.
then
Amazing.
he was willing to train me directly inside of private discipleship. And so there was this system there that he leveraged. but then he was a master within the system, so he could take me and create of me something that I would have never done myself. And if I didn't have a great
Mhm.
teacher to sort of show me how to do the system well, I would have never created self-reliance inside of martial arts. So I kind of look at it like I look at that developmental path in anything. Hey, I'm looking to create emotional and mental and nervous system mastery. Let's find a system.
Mhm.
Let's find a great facilitator and then marry it. And then we apply those four things that you brought up earlier, which we
Right.
need to apply in regard to any space of transformation, which is number one, we got to be willing to stop doing something we're currently doing. Because whatever we're
Right.
currently doing has produced our current
Stop the
result. We
madness.
can't keep
That's like
doing that.
definition of insanity, right?
Exactly, exactly
Definition of
right. It's
insanity.
like, duh, that doesn't work, but it's so easy to do, it's so easy to try
Yeah.
harder at something that's not working. So we gotta be willing to stop doing something we're currently doing. We gotta be willing to adopt something that we're not currently doing. We gotta start doing something new, something different. Because if it's not different and actually different, it's probably not gonna produce a new result. Number
Right.
3, we've gotta be willing to be uncomfortable and take action despite that discomfort. Because so many
Right.
people, like, it's kinda weird, we can't rely on our, decision making relative to creating results we've never had before. Because the thing
Right.
that we're going to need to do initially is gonna feel wrong. Like, when I started first investing money, it was terrifying because I'd never done it before, and all my mind's focus was on the fear of losing money, right? And so it was the right thing to build wealth. Like, I wouldn't be financially free today if I hadn't started investing. But it was so uncomfortable and so terrifying at first because I like was so afraid of losing money. And so even though it was the right thing and I had a good mentor and I had a great guide and all the things were in place that I just discussed, it felt wrong. And so that's again why we need that like person to help guide us so that when it feels
Right.
wrong, relative to the result we want, we can go, "Oh, wait, well, this is probably right." So we need a new relationship with fear. I'm aware, I'm afraid, I'm gonna take action despite this fear. So we need to learn the difference between I'm afraid and my life is threatened, kinda like I was on a trail run last summer
Yeah.
and I came across
Right.
I was running sprints and I came around a turn, there was a rattlesnake across the trail and I jumped over it because I
Wow.
almost stepped on its head. That's like legitimate
You
fear. Like you're about to get bit
yeah.
and it's a problem, right? Most fear though
It's
is,
like
oh, I'm
taking a
aware
leap of
I'm
fear. I was gonna say instead of, this whole
exact
topic is instead of taking a leap of faith, it's taking a leap of
it
fear.
is
There's
exactly
something in
right. It's
that,
like I'm
right?
aware I'm
Yeah.
afraid, I'm aware I
Literally
don't
and
wanna do
figuratively.
this, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Right.
And then that brings us to
Yeah.
the 4th condition, which
Right.
helps navigate that, which is make your vision and the outcome you want to attain the priority. Because then we can look at fear and then assess, hey, will investing take me to what I want to create? Yes, if it's done in the right way. Okay, I'm going to do this, even though it doesn't feel right. And so it's counterintuitive because so many people have been taught trust your
And
gut. Your gut's lying to you all the time. We can't
mm.
actually trust ourselves relative to creating the outcomes that we want to create that we have not yet created. We need to trust ourselves enough to find the right support system to
Take
take
a
us
leap
there.
of fear is
Yeah,
what I'm
I
hearing.
love that. I like the
I've
way
never
you
actually
said
heard
that.
that
It's
expression,
exactly
but
that way. I'm going to borrow that.
absolutely, and your story about
Yeah.
literally taking a leap over the rattlesnake is
Yeah,
perfect,
because even
right? I
still
mean,
today, like, when I am looking to create, because I always have aspirations beyond where I am because I just love the art of
right.
transformation and evolution. Like, for me, that's what keeps me alive and, like, what's keep makes life fulfilling
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. And I still realize, like, "Whoa, I am really uncomfortable with this." It probably means I'm on track. It's like the
Yeah.
opposite indicator, like, emotions are there to inform where we
Oh
are.
my
It's like, "Oh, this is actually telling me I'm playing a new game," which
yeah,
also tells me the possibility of the outcome is here. Whereas if I felt
right.
comfortable, I would know for sure it's not the
It's
right thing.
usually when we start to get uncomfortable, like, I must be doing something wrong. Maybe there's, that's a sign that I'm moving in the wrong direction. All this fear is coming up. Whereas I heard a coach say, I've worked with for years. Her name's Khan. She's amazing. And she said, everything we want is on the other side of our fear, which is interesting. I mean, similar to what you're kind of saying, not saying it in different ways, but I thought, wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a,
it's
it's a cool way to
it's
think
so
about
well
it.
said, right? Because it truly is. If it's actually new and different, which will actually take you to
Yeah.
a new and different outcome result and version of yourself, there's a period of discomfort until it's normalized. Like now, once it becomes familiar, you'll be comfortable in it. But until it's familiar,
Right.
your
Yeah.
brain is gonna go, "It's a threat." Like, even though it's taking you to something better, your brain just goes, "It's different. I don't know what this is. There's potential harm here. Therefore, we should avoid it at all costs." And so we have to learn to
Right.
override.
It's so there's so many different layers, to this, and I love how you've simplified it, and I love because I know I've kept you here probably longer. Your team's gonna be they're probably emailing me right now.
No,
They're
it's
probably calling you. I put it on do not disturb just so your team wouldn't be contacting me and saying, "Greg, you're over your your time." But I thought, I mean, Joey, this has been amazing, and I thought maybe to kind of wrap things up, or before we wrap things up, like for anyone listening today, what do you hope they feel or believe or do differently after listening to this?
Yeah. For me, like what's most important at this point, in the journey for me is like I just want to educate people because there's so many people looking for to better their life, looking to sincerely want to transform their reality and get an outcome result that they like to get. And they just don't know what to do or how to go about the process. And unfortunately, today, healthy skepticism is more important than ever because, everybody's kind of hanging their shingle as an expert and a coach and this kind of stuff. And when you look at the marketing, it's hard to distinguish like what's real, what's not. And so, the
Right.
three things I would say is like number one, know that the life that you want to have and the version of yourself that you like to emerge into is possible no matter where you are in life, no matter what's happened in your life, it's 100% possible. Number 2, look for the right support mechanism and system to take you
Mhm.
there, because none of us do it on our own. Like, I didn't get here on my own. And then number 3, when you find that system, take that leap of faith, and even though you feel afraid and insecure about it, like, go for it, and even if it doesn't work out, it's a step in the right direction. Because I did lots of things that didn't work and some things that made my life and matters worse, but I learned something through it, and I knew not to do those key things again. And so then when I made my next decision to opt in, even though it didn't go so well, I made better decisions. And it was that process that led me to the outcome. So the only wrong thing to do is nothing
Mm.
relative
Yeah, very
to evolving yourself and producing the life that you deserve to know
Well,
and
I
have.
love that. That's amazing. And you also mentioned too that you had some gifts for the anyone listening to the podcast. Is that still
Yeah.
on the
So,
table?
yeah, everybody
Okay.
who, for you, it's a special URL,
Yeah.
joeyklein.com Joy squared, the word
Mm-hmm.
squared,
Yeah.
SQUARED. So
Hmm.
if they go to that link, it's a special link just for the podcast listeners of your show. And,
Very
I
cool.
always think like the only way you know for sure is to have an experience of something to really know it's
Yeah.
different. And so we put together a complimentary training where if they'd like, they can go to that URL, they can get free copies of my book. Just give me your name, your address, actually free, not shipping. We'll ship it to you on me.
Oh
They
wow.
can get the books and read them. And then number 2, if they want, they can sign up for a pattern fix training where they can bring
Hmm.
their current life challenge or circumstance to one of my top trainers, and they will do a free training where they'll unpack it with them, identify the pattern, but then we'll give them the tools and the mechanism on how to start shifting it and move forward and create a different outcome result based on the mechanisms and the concepts that we talked about here, so they can really see how it is different from therapy and things like that. And, if people, again, no obligation. If people don't want to train with me or my company, no problem. What's most important is we want people to leave with a toolkit of how to get started moving toward
Hmm.
producing the result they want, number 1, and number 2, education on when they do feel like it's right for them to train with someone, that they understand how
Right.
to evaluate properly so they make sure they're in good hands and not in the hands of somebody who may be really well-meaning, but doesn't have the competency to support. The second way to get a hold of me is my URL on, Instagram, the real Joey Klein.
Yeah.
If they follow me on there, I'm always on there, like, putting posts up and little tips like this kinda stuff that they could apply in their life, and so that's another way to just kinda check
And I'll
things
put
out.
those links, when I post this, when we post the clips and stuff from it, and I promote this episode, which I'm super excited to do. I'll put all those links in there so it's easy to access. And thank you so much, not just for being here and spending, an hour plus, with me talking, but
Yeah.
also for those gifts. I mean, that's very generous. Really appreciate that, and I hope our listeners, take you up on it. So yeah, Joey, what I appreciate most about this conversation is that you remind us that transformation doesn't begin with circumstances. It doesn't begin with
Yep.
the past. It begins with consciousness and awareness. And you remind us that emotions are just information, not instructions, and there aren't good or bad emotions. And And that awareness creates choice, and that what we resist persists. And that fulfillment isn't found by waiting for life to change, but by becoming the person capable of creating a different,
Yeah.
reality. And perhaps most importantly, you've shown us that joy, peace, and freedom are destinations or capacities we can intentionally train. So my invitation is to, for people to take a leap of faith, or as we've, as we now coin here, take a leap of fear. That could be a book that we co-authored too. So
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, your story, and your life's work with us. Really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. And this has been a super fun conversation. I'm happy you had me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank the audience too. Everyone who's kind of joined, everyone who listens to this at some point, in some way, watched it, listened to it. And if something in this conversation resonated with you, listen to your intuition and trust your intuition. Choose one insight and put it into action. And maybe it's becoming more aware of your emotional patterns. Maybe it's practicing emotional centering. Maybe it's taking Joy up on one of his offers for training for the book, all the above. Maybe it's paying attention to whether you're operating out of fear or love. And whatever it is, like take one intentional step. Because while insight creates possibility, action creates transformation, as Joey reminded us. Take action, do something, because the worst thing to do is do nothing. And remember, joy isn't something we find, it's something we create. Until next time, live, work, and lead with more joy intentionally. Cheers.
Awesome.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Joy², where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel, it's something you create and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast. It's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing joy². And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share Joy² so the ripple keeps spreading.